Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank Podcast, the show where members of Team MagicJank get together and we talk about the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. And we are neck deep in spoiler season for Final Fantasy, so that is the plan today. My name's Graham, go by HamHawks42 on the internet, and I'm joined by the one and only Carlo, C. Favretto_Jr. How we doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. Getting ready for Final Fantasy is coming out now. Jeez, what is it? In 1 week? 2 weeks? 2 weeks? Who knows anymore?
I think 2 weeks at this point. Yeah, it's coming up fast, though. That's
2 weeks. And
2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think, as of the recording. Yeah, but it's right around the corner, for sure.
Very, very, very soon. And so looking over and reading over all of the cards, there are an abundance of legendary creatures in this set, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, just curious which kinds of these cards are going to get played in Standard, or if they're just Commander cards.
Yep, that's the idea. And so our plan today, we've hand selected a number of cards that are causing kind of a stir that people are curious about. And honestly, if any spring to mind as we go, just call them out and we'll pull them up. I say that as though we have a chat, live chat. Sorry, we're streamers. Old habits die hard. But Carlo, if you think of anything as we go, feel free. And I think, honestly, starting from the top, you mentioned having a lot of legendary creatures, and that is something that I've heard a couple of people mention as kind of this, maybe a criticism of the set. But I also think it's kind of inevitable in adapting this particular property, just because Final Fantasy is made up of individual games that have these gigantic casts, and there's a ton of them, and all of those characters are legendary. You know, just based on the way that Magic handles unique characters, legendary creature is really the only type they could be. And so I feel like it's kind of an inevitable, just kind of the cost of doing business when it comes to making, this product or this property in Magic. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, though. Like, do we have too many legends in the main set, or is that an issue? What are your thoughts?
I don't know how much of it is like an actual issue, coming from a Standard perspective anyway.
Mm-hmm.
This is just one set amongst 3 years worth of Standard cards that are legal in that format. There are lands currently in Standard that matter if you were playing a bunch of legendary creatures, right? Like Plaza of Heroes comes to mind, Relic of Legends comes to mind. Now, those two cards are both from Dominaria United, and so that's going to rotate out of Standard in 2 sets from now, something like that, at the end of the summer. And so we won't have those cool cards that let you fix your mana, especially for legendaries, protecting them, allowing you to tap them for mana and do some things. But I think that the cards in this set, at least those that have been previewed so far, you don't have to jam like 4 of a legendary in your deck. I mean, some of the cards are just like really powerful. I think that's different per the character that is, accentuated in these cards. But I don't know. I'm excited to jam a bunch of them in Standard, so we'll see what happens here.
Absolutely. So yeah, all of you folks out there who've been holding out hope that a Joda the Unifier deck will step up and find a home. Hey, you got some new toys, maybe. For a couple of months, you can make it work. There's a possibility. Because, you're going to have all kinds of options up and down the curve in all different colors in this set. You just will. Yeah. All right. Also a little bit of context before we get started, or before we dive into the card specifically. So we're coming from a Standard perspective. Both of us play quite a bit of Standard. We also both dabble with Commander as well, pretty extensively, because, we're Magic players in 2025. Commander's just kind of part of the deal. And I don't know, we thoroughly enjoy it. Yeah. But so there's that. When it comes to Final Fantasy specifically, I want to let folks know exactly where we stand on this. So I've played quite a few Final Fantasy games in my day. 6 through 9 is kind of the sweet spot. That early 2000s, or, the late 90s, early 2000s era, Super Nintendo, PS1, that was my time to really dig into Final Fantasy. So those references in those games, I'll get and probably provide some context as to why it's a hit or not. Meanwhile, cards from Final Fantasy 15, 16... I got nothing. So Carlo, how about you, man? What's your what's your background?
I can tell you Personally, I haven't really played many of the Final Fantasy games. I would say I probably played the early games when I was younger, but that was about it. I am one of the MTG ambassadors for the Final Fantasy set, so I've been able to see and create content for the stuff that's coming out. And so, we were chatting before we started this podcast about how I rely on my friends that have played the games more than me. And, my friend Darian, or Big D the Villain 76, he is the Final Fantasy guru of our game group. And I would bet you a lot of money that lots of like gamer guy groups or gamer groups around you have like those who specify in certain games, right? And others that haven't touched a lick of, a certain title. And, Final Fantasy is very intriguing. I think the gameplay of the games is very fun. I've been trying to play a little bit to learn more about the characters and stuff like that over the last couple weeks. But the beauty of Final Fantasy coming to Magic is I can be that Magic guy that is introducing Final Fantasy fans who have never played Magic into Magic, right? Now you have cards that are in our game. I kind of equate that to Lord of the Rings, right? I've never watched any of the Lord of the Rings movies or read any of the books or anything like that.
Okay.
So all the characters were relatively new to me, but I could teach somebody who knew about Lord of the Rings about like magic mechanics and how that applied to those characters. In the same way that Lord of the Rings brought a lot of people into Magic who hadn't played it before, I think the same is going to be true about Final Fantasy, right? Especially if you're interested in playing like with your favorite characters, and they're going to be standard legal. So that benefit is we get more folks playing standard, or if they want to play Commander for the first time too, that's always great. But like you said, our perspective is primarily going to come from a standard point of view. But who doesn't like to jam sweet games of Commander?
Heck yeah, man. So. Well, and I love the fact, so you don't have as much of a history with the game, but you've had time to do the research, and you've tapped the right folks. Yes. I love that. That's perfect.
Yes, rely on your friends, folks.
Right? Absolutely. Well, we're part of a community, right? Like, take advantage. Like, that's a good thing. Yeah, I think that's really awesome, and I agree with the sentiment that it going into Standard could be a good thing for the game. So if you're listening to this and this is your first, and you're new to Magic, but you are, a Final Fantasy fan, welcome. We're glad to have you, and I'm really excited for the potential for Universes Beyond. And it coming to Standard, it loses the optional nature that Universes Beyond had for a while there, and I understand that can be a sore spot for folks, but at the end of the day, the net good this could do for the game, I think, is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said this when Lord of the Rings came out. The way that Universes Beyond was sort of put into Magic outside of Commander, I think it should have always just went into Standard. And if that meant making the Lord of the Rings of the set, itself like less powerful and not a modern level, then it should have been done. And the reason for that is because it does confuse a little bit of newer players coming into the game, not knowing whether or not they can show up to your FNM Standard playing with the new Lord of the Rings cards that they just bought. And if you want an entry point of folks to come into Magic, Standard is significantly cheaper than Modern, which is what they did with Lord of the Rings. Right, You're talking about maybe if you want a tier 1 standard deck, spending like a couple $100s on a deck versus thousands of dollars for a modern deck. So it's better from a price perspective to get newer players into a particular format that's non-Commander. And so I'm glad. I was happy at Vegas, last MagicCon Vegas, when they made that announcement at the panel. Like, yes, finally, like this is the change that you need. So. I'm hyped for Final Fantasy and all the other Universes Beyond this year being Standard legal.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, go in or all in or all out. Like, it just secret layer reskins or make the set Standard legal. Yep.
Right.
100%. And and here we are. So let's get into some of the cards themselves. At this moment, we've seen most of the set, and we have thoughts. They did not pull any punches. The set has a lot of real powerhouses in it. And let's kind of like rip the Band-Aid and start big with Ultima Origin of Oblivion. This is, Ultima is a name for, it appears on a couple of different weapons throughout the series, as well as like some spells and all. Like it's a word that is reused often throughout the Final Fantasy franchise. This particular one is a legendary creature god that is, another great thing that the cards do, by the way, if you haven't noticed, in the lower left corner, down by the collector number, it actually tells you which game is being referenced, which is one of those little details that I am so glad they added that. Because this is one that I didn't... This is a Final Fantasy 16 reference. This one's a blind spot for me, but now I know where I can find this character. Sweet. So, it's a 5-drop, colorless, 4/4 god, with flying, and whenever Ultima attacks, put a blight counter on target land. For as long as that land has a blight counter on it, it loses all land types and abilities, and has tap to add colorless. Whenever you tap a land for colorless, you add an additional colorless.
Yeah, so a few things about this card. Honestly, I think this is one of my favorite cards that have been previewed from this set so far. I 100% think that this card is standard playable. The ability to put a blight counter on target land. Note that it doesn't say target land an opponent controls, so you can turn your own lands into just colorless producing lands late game. But also turning off your opponent's creature lands in standard is pretty important. It also turns off Soulstone Sanctuary. Even though it's a colorless land, it makes it so that colorless creature land that can be put in any deck can't be activated. Also notably, for as long as we still have Domain in Standard, it turns off the basic land types. That's less flexibility for the Verges, which require basic land types, and Leyline Bindings reduce cost for Domain. While still giving you a 4/4 flyer, which is just decent stats. Now, the plus side about Ultima 2 is so you tap a land for colorless, you get an additional colorless. And this set has a bunch of different colorless lands, and we also see the return of Waste into Standard. Waste does not have a basic land type, but it is a basic land that taps for a colorless. So you are turning effectively your basic lands into tapping for extra colorless if you are primarily colorless base lands. And there are a bunch of sweet, like uncommon and rare colorless lands that you could use that also have some utility to them.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And when it comes to colorless lands in Standard, we already, this set is loaded with cool ones, and we'll get into some of those as well today, because freaking, of course. But Standard, you mentioned the Soulstone Sanctuary, and that's a great call out. Mm-hmm. But we also have, I believe it's Crawling Barrens, there's Fountain Port, and all of the Pain lands. So your Yavimaya Coast, your is it, the Shivan Reef, thank you. Those cards they do tap for colorless by default. And so if you want to have just a splash in a heavy colorless deck, those are fantastic ways to do it. We still have Mirex, for goodness sake, is still running around out there too. I mean, we've got options. Even before this set shows up, colorless land production is easy to do right now. The thing about this card that I think is interesting is that the top end power on it is very, very strong. I love the idea of turning your opponents everywhere into a waste, essentially. And because that shutting off Verges and Domain and whatnot could be very, very powerful, and all the things you mentioned. But doubling your own mana production, I've played against enough Forsaken Monuments in older formats to know how good that is. That is a huge deal. I love the fact that Ultima does not have any kind of indestructible or hexproof. We often see on gods. Being tough to deal with is something that we see for a lot of Magic gods. That's not the case here, and I think that's for the best, because if you have even just one land that can produce mana after the fact, the cost on this isn't as high as it seems. If you can double spell, Ultima could be practically free. Or you actually, if it's really late in the game and you have enough lands down, you could go mana positive with this, which is nuts. So, and by enough, I mean 3. If you have 8 lands down when you play this, or if you're using mana from some other source and you have 3 untapped lands, you're mana positive, which that's again, big deal. And, and right now we're talking colorless. Ugin Eye of the Storms it's it's here. Like,
Yeah.
you knew we were going to mention it because we're talking colorless and standard. Is this going to become a deck, do you think? Is this going to be the next thing?
So I remember when Tarkir Dragonstorm came out and we were doing the streamer event for that, there was lots of folks that were playing like a mono green ramp deck, like just trying to ramp up into Ugin. And playing cards like Hedron Archive, for example, is standard legal because it's in Foundations, right? That taps for, that's 4 mana, taps for 2 colorless mana, and also lets you draw cards, right? We have there are other colorless cards in the set, like Instant Ramen is like 2 mana, enter the battlefield, draw a card, right? And that could possibly be standard playable, who knows? But imagine casting Ugin and then zeroing Ugin, casting Instant Ramen, draw a card, exile one of your opponent's colored permanents, sack this, gain life against the aggressive red decks or what have you. I mean, it's the thing. I am a very much a fan of, Cheerios or whatever, and I think this like has that type of a feel to it. But with Ugin, you could go the mono green ramp route, or there was actually a pretty playable mono white control deck that was running around, playing like lay down arms in the deck, being able to play like Elsbeth, Wrath spells like Split Up, Day of Judgment, and or Sunfall. And then also played a pseudo ramp package with Hedron Archive to get up to Ugin. It's just like a value card. And maybe you also got to Ultimate Ugin and bring out like Cityscape Leveler or something like this.
Right.
So I see Ultima in a similar deck like that. Lay down arms might not be as great or as usable as it was in that previous version. If we're going to go more hard on the colorless route, like you said, you can utilize the pain lands, right? I could just jam like Brushland and added Archer Wastes into my deck, and my lands produce colorless and colored mana for pain. And Ultima into Ugin sounds pretty nice.
Seems good.
Ramping into it, and if you ultimate, no pun intended, on the Ugin, and you can get Ultima out of your deck and put it on the battlefield and turn off your opponent's stuff. I mean, I just think there's a lot of great synergy with it, and the other colorless lands that are in Final Fantasy and in other sets too are really going to help back this card up.
Absolutely. And I think right now Ugin is so good that we are seeing these very colorful decks using Ugin as a finisher. And I think Ugin is going to be at its best when more of the support cards are playable and good independent of Ugin, but are also colorless. Because I've been seeing people run like Candy Trail and Prophetic Prism in some of those decks just to have some colorless stuff to throw out with Ugin. And like, it's fine, doing a little bit of those, the Cheerio eggs kind of things. Sure, like, it's not terrible, but given how fast Standard is right now, a lot of those are dead draws a lot of the time, unfortunately. And so I think the fact that Ultima is a clear signal that a colorless mid game is now all of a sudden on the table. And I think that's something that Ugin really, really wanted. And even if that colorless deck is not meta competitive right after Final Fantasy, we have to keep an eye out on all of the upcoming sets to see what colorless stuff is available in them. If we start seeing more like inexpensive mana rocks start showing up in some other sets or things like that, then all of a sudden, we could in 6, 7, 8 months time have a really solid tier 1 colorless deck kind of on the back of these cards. I wouldn't be surprised. So even if it's not great right away, like, keep an eye out, guys. It's going to be a thing, I think.
Yeah, I would love for them to reprint like Mind Stone in the Standard. Right now you have the Iron Crag, but that's going to rotate out at the end of the summer. And again, 2 mana, tap for a colorless, turns into an equipment, which is pretty sweet. So I'm hoping that we do get another 2 mana rock that's colorless, whether or not it's legendary, to help make these cards a little bit more playable.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up, let's talk about some of the lands that are in Final Fantasy that could go into that deck. So one that is, relatively recently spoiled as of this recording, Clive's Hideaway. We've got another Hideaway land, which that makes me so happy. It's an untapped colorless land. It has the type town, on it, which is a subtype that a lot of the lands in the set have. And it has Hideaway 4, the kind of the old school, Lorwyn Hideaway number, which you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, you get to exile one of them face down, and then later on, once a certain condition is met, you can cast it. And in this case, the condition is to pay 2 and tap this land. You may play the exile card without paying its mana cost if you control 4 or more legendary creatures. So we were talking Legends Matters. Here we go. We've got a colorless land where Legends matter.
Yeah, so imagine if this card is like hiding your Ugin underneath, though. And and then and then I can pay 2, tap, and cast the Ugin. I mean, I really like this card. This is, it's a land that enters untapped, right? It taps for colorless mana immediately. It has that hideaway effect. I kind of like hideaway effect. Collector's Cage has that type of an ability, and I really like that card, but you got to have 3 different creatures with 3 different powers or whatever on the board, so it's kind of hard to accomplish. It's much easier when it's on a land, and you happen to meet the requirements, and then you can cast the card that's under it. I really like this card, and not that I want to sidetrack into a different preview, but there are cards that help you do these things to search for the town type cards. They did spoil a green ramp spell called Reach the Horizon, which is 3 and a green. It's a sorcery. It searches your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or town cards with different names. Put them on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. So you could ramp for this hideaway land, then get the hideaway ability, put your payoff card under it, and very easily cast the spell as long as you meet the requirements of the legendary creatures, which is totally possible in this set, given the overabundance of legends that exist.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, I dig it. Well, and yes, Reach the Horizon is, it reminds me very much of the Explosive Vegetation Plus, that we've seen before. It reminds me a lot of Circuitous Route, which was very similar, except it lets you find gates. Same kind of a deal, just with a different subtype. Yep. Good stuff. Yeah, and I mean, but it's funny, because in the case of Circuitous Route, that almost exclusively would just find you tap dual lands. In the case of that, you can find some of these utility cards that some of them are very strong. And so, cards like Clive's Hideaway, I love that Hideaway. It just looks good. Don't really know what else to say there. The biggest downside is that it does only tap for colorless, but it does enter untapped, which is a tremendous benefit. However, it's not the only, let's compare to another town, Starting Town. This is another rare land that they previewed from the set that I think, not to bury the lead, I think it's going to be fantastic. So it is typed town. It enters tapped unless it's your first, second, or third turn of the game, and it taps for colorless, or you can tap it, pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color.
Yeah, so this is a land that just slots into any deck, right? And it's going to be especially helpful when the pain lands rotate out of Standard, because a lot of them are in Brothers War, right? Or they all are in Brothers War. And so at the end of the summer, when that rotates out, this is a pain land that literally every deck can play to help fix your mana. First, second, third turn of the game is where I kind of want my card that's going to produce a mana of any color to enter the battlefield. And you don't always have to take a pain for it either. And like you said, it's typed. So the Search the Horizon or Reach the Horizon lets you search out for this card if you need to ramp into it. It all around, fantastic card. Is it better than City of Brass?
Yeah, it's not strictly better than City of Brass, but but you have to ask the question, and that tells you a lot. That's arguable. So the reason that we're comparing it to City of Brass is because, City of Brass basically is this exact same card, except the first 2 abilities were removed. It's just tap, pay a life, add 1 mana of any color. And the reason why, I think, personally, I would probably prefer Starting Town over City of Brass or Mana Confluence, which is also pretty much the same thing. I think I would prefer Starting Town more often than not, because I am able to tap it for a mana and not take damage.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest downside of City of Brass and Mana Confluence, is that they will always hurt you every single time you use them, unless somebody has an Urborg in play or something. At the end of the day, they just hurt to use. and this doesn't. Now, if it's late in the game and you have to go fetch this up, or if it's your 4th land drop, it happens to come in tapped. Like that's not nothing. That is a downside.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I've played plenty. Like, I don't know about you, but I've definitely tried to build like 3 color decks that are trying to hit, 2 specific colors on turn 2. And man, that's hard. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but you end up running a lot of pain lands and things like that in the hopes that it'll line up and you're willing to take some damage. This just slotting in perfectly. I mean, all of a sudden, Skirmish Rhino on turn 3 is going to be significantly more consistent with something like this. So I love this card. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And out of all of them we've seen so far, if I find out that this is seeing play in like Vintage or Legacy, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I don't know those formats, so maybe I'm talking out of school here, but like, it reads like it's worth considering, right? Like, yeah, I know my Timeless decks are gonna have this in it. Like, it's
for sure.
Yeah, it's just freaking good. Yeah.
And the other thing that like pops in my mind, like you mentioned Skirmish Rhino, right? So like being able to cast a card like that on turn 3 with 3 coming to play untapped lands is not that it's difficult, but we will also lose half of the fast lands with rotation. So, this does also help alleviate that issue. So it fills in for the pain land part / fast land that where you need that mana on those early turns.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I love it. Just kind of, it's one of those like where it's kind of 10 out of 10 no notes, right?
And also just like aptly named starting town.
Right.
Like
starting town.
Turn 1, starting town. GG's.
We start in the starting town. Yeah, exactly. I love it. That's it. Now, okay. On the one hand, I love the flavor. They got that completely correct. But it is funny because this is credited as being associated with Final Fantasy 1 appropriately. Was the like I don't know Final Fantasy 1 at all, and I'm gonna ask you. I know you don't know either, but like did the starting town in that game just not have a name? Because this is the name here is like meta on a certain level where it's referencing the way that we talk about the games. Like the starting town is not the diegetic name of that place within the game. And so there's a part of me that kind of is like that kind of it feels a little out of character compared to some of the other cards we've seen. And I don't know. It's also very possible that the starting town in that game just the name is never mentioned, and so that's just all it's known as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that comes up is Cornelia.
Okay.
As like the first land. I'm not sure if it's the first town you encounter or it's literally the first town in the game, but I would imagine it's maybe where you encounter first as opposed to where you start. And so the town that you start doesn't have necessarily a name.
Okay. Yeah, that makes as much sense as anything. At the end of the day, I'm sure many I'm sure millions of gamers have known that as the starting town regardless, even if the name was published somewhere. So it's fine. It does seem a little different flavor-wise than some of the other stuff we see.
Yeah.
Such as the next land that I want to talk about. So I brought up Lindblom Industrial Regency, and this actually is a stand-in for a cycle of lands in this set. And if you want to talk about any of the other ones individually, just let me know and I'll pull them up. But there is a cycle of lands in this set that are also towns, which when you think about Reach the Horizon and some of the things you can do with that, plus bounce lands, this gets interesting. But so this particular land, it enters tapped and only produces red. Okay, so that is a crappy land. However, it comes with an adventure, and all 5 of these are monocolored tap lands, but they have an adventure on them. And in the case of Lindblom, the adventure is an instant called Mage Siege, where for 2 and a red, you create a 0/1 black wizard creature token with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 damage to each opponent. Now, these black mage tokens are something that we see. There are a number of cards that make them, a lot of them associated with Final Fantasy 9, specifically Kuja. Flavorfully, on point, you love to see it. But the thing that's interesting here is you have a turn 3 spell that is maybe like not amazing, but fine, but it also is your land drop to follow it up. So What do we think about this? What are your thoughts?
I think it might take some time for these particular lands to be playable in Standard. Um, some of the spells, the adventures, are better than others on these cards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this one, so you're paying 3 mana to get a 0/1 Black Wizard creature token. And that cares only if you cast a non-creature spell for that creature to deal damage. So, let's say you end step cast this at instant speed, make a creature. It does nothing else immediately. It just makes the 0/1, right? You have to cast another spell back up to like deal a damage.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they enter tapped is like also not appealing. I would say maybe there is some synergy with these lands and like playing Splunking, which is from Ixalan that lets your lands enter untapped.
Mm-hmm.
So you could see some of that because, yeah, I agree, right? Let's say I have Splunking in play. I'm only using this card as an example, and I cast this Mage Siege at end step. Then on my turn, I get to untap, play the land untapped from Adventure, right, to get my land drop down there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you get like the full value because then you have an extra mana for the next turn. Whereas you're a land down, like your surveil lands that exist in Standard are just better than this in all aspects. So it's got to have a playable adventure spell to want to go alongside it. So I'm hoping that at least one of these lands becomes playable. There are different lands outside of Lindblom
Yeah.
that do other things that you will see. But the fact that it makes an 0/1 wizard does synergize with the Rakdos, or the black-red theme of the set, which is making black wizard tokens that do this ability. So it's going to have interesting limited play, I think. And we'll see how it interacts with Standard.
Yeah. So I think, honestly, this is one of those where these look pretty safe. And it's funny, I mentioned Lindblom specifically because I think it's one of the ones that, of them, it looks the most playable. Is kind of my gut check on it. Another example is like Jadur, Aristocratic Capital. It's the blue one, where it has the spell on it is sorcery. It's Overture for 6. Target opponent mills half their library rounded down. It's that traumatized kind of effect, which, when you combine that with Bruvak, it's a 2-shot, it's a 1-shot kill. Like, all right, that's fun. But at the same time, like, it's a 6-drop that hits half your opponent's library. By then, if you're playing an all-in mill deck, hopefully you've milled them somewhat. So, like, this is one of those where, like, I don't think this is particularly good. But at the same time, the idea of being in a late-game control deck, being able to cast a hopefully meaningful spell, and then play your land drop, following it just freely, and making sure that you will always hit your land drop moving forward. I think that could be very, very powerful. And they played it safe on these designs, but I think they had to, because otherwise they could have broken this wide open.
It's interesting you say that because I thought that the blue one was unplayable until I saw them preview the water crystal. And the water crystal is rare in the set, a series of a cycle of crystals, right? Water Crystal is 2 and 2 blue legendary artifact. Your blue spells cost 1 colorless less to cast, which includes that adventure spell. And then it says if an opponent were to mill 1 or more cards, they mill that many cards plus 4 instead. I like the mill synergy. Granted, if you were to use that adventure spell, because it says 1 or more, they mill half plus 4. That's how it should work out. But I don't know. I like it. I mean, the synergy between these two cards is pretty huge. We still have more of the set to see, but I think you could actually make a legit mill deck in Standard. And if it's straight mono blue, hey, we have Aetherize that exists. To bounce like attacking creatures. You have an abundance of counter spells. You do have the 2 mana Saga from Dominaria United that currently in the Omniscience deck plays as a win condition to like loop it with Maring River Regent.
Yeah, founding the third path. Yep.
Yeah, and so
yeah,
there's tons of possibilities here. But I think the blue land honestly is the most playable out of the cycle so far. Because it does put a clock on your opponent. That being said, there are graveyard-based strategies that exist in Standard now, right? Like, I wouldn't want to play this land against, like, Jeskai Oculus. I wouldn't want to play it against the Omniscience deck. And I wouldn't want to play it against, like, Insidious Roots builds, right? Cards that care about the graveyard.
Yeah, that could hurt.
If you told me that this card said target player mills half their library, then the playability of this card spikes. Right? If I can mill myself into whatever strategy I want, then that is great. But it also just says target opponent.
Yeah, no, if it said target player, I would have led much more favorably on this card. Yeah, for sure. It's funny, actually, I like the fact that you mentioned the water crystal, because the crystals are another one that I want to talk about. It's another cycle. This set is just riddled with cycles, which I'm cool with. We saw that with Dragonstorm too, a lot of cycles, and I think that's cool. I like that. And you're right. The water crystal alleviates a lot of the pain points on this card in a cool way. But the other one, when it comes to the mill deck specifically, River Churn Monument from Aether Drift is around too. And I thought this card was a house for a minute. And so even when Jace the Perfected Mind rotates out, which is currently one of the strongest mill cards that we have, which is a phenomenal mill card. So again, another great mill tech piece. I feel like River Churn Monument is just that, and that synergy with Jadur is just asking for it, because that exhaustibility after you've, hit somebody for half that's GG's, right?
Yeah, and this plus Water Crystal makes your opponent mill 6 cards on the battlefield for 1 mana.
That's incredible.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It makes me, what it really wants me to do, we talked about this card during Aether Drift. I think it's called Unstoppable Force. It's also in Aether Drift. It's an enchantment for 2 and a blue, and it says you untap your non-land permanents. It's called Unstoppable Force. I think it's called.
I think it's Unstoppable Plan, I want to say.
Oh, Unstoppable Plan. Yeah. It's got like Jace and the minions. Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. 2 and a blue at the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control. I mean, this is a card that's a house, in my opinion, with River Churn Monument. I don't know how playable that this card actually is in Standard, given the current aggressive nature of Standard. But, Water Crystal also taps to mill your opponent cards. So, like, if we can, like, solidify where you also are able to have, like, mana sources that are non-land permanents and untap them, I mean, River Churn Monument, Water Crystal's kind of where I want to be.
Yeah.
But Standard's got to get a little less aggressive, I think.
Yeah, if the meta slows down a little bit, if we get into a more mid-rangey meta, something like that could survive. Yeah, and I dig it. Another interaction that I want to call out, going back to the Adventure Lands specifically, is there was a card earlier in the preview season that was shown off, Zel Dinch. This guy is a 0/3 human monk for 3 that lets you play an additional land on your turn, but at the beginning of your end step, you return a land you control to its owner's hand. These adventures, you play them down as a land, and then Zell can pick them back up, and so you can recast the spell. So this, like, having Zell online alongside those adventure spells is basically them having buyback. Like buyback 0, right? Because you cast a spell, play the land, and possibly with the additional land drop that Zell gave you, and then bounce them back up to your hand, and you can fire them again the following turn. Or heck, if you've got the mana, and in the case of Lindblom, that's an instant. Like, there's nothing stopping you if you have the mana from throwing it again, fairly quickly. I mean, that seems intriguing to me. And there is also a red crystal that makes your red spells cost less. And so something like that, and all of a sudden being able to kind of maybe have a spell that can stack those black mages, so all of a sudden you can have a lot of different, you can create a number of gutter snipes, basically. And as you're creating that army, you're pinging more and more and more exponentially. I mean, it's a mana-hungry kind of a setup. I don't know how realistic it is, but I don't know. The jank wheels are turning on this. There might be something there, right? Yeah.
And if you're not turning jank wheels, what are you turning? I mean,
right? Absolutely. Like, what are we doing here if we're not getting a little janky with it? So yeah, bouncing the adventures with Zell seems like a really interesting idea. So I'm definitely gonna try something like that. Yeah, in the not too distant future. So yeah, the Adventurelands, interesting stuff. I think. Well, time will tell if they hit the mark on this one, or if they go back to the well at all. All right. So moving on to other things. Speaking of bouncing, let's talk about Ambrosia Whiteheart. This is a legendary bird. It is a 2/2 for 2 with flash. And when it enters, you may return another permanent you control to its owner's hand. If this sounds familiar, you've been paying attention. You're right. But Ambrosia also has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is probably one of the fairer options that you have for the Nurturing Pixie deck, right? Orzhov Pixie, Esper Pixie, whatever you want to call it. I think the Orzhov deck is better than the Esper deck, but that's my personal opinion.
These days it seems to be.
But,
yeah, it seems to be that way.
we're talking about the deck where you get to play Hopeless Nightmare and Momentum Breaker. In Tarkir Dragonstorm, I said that the Kirin, the 2-mana Kirin, was like the best card in the set. Obviously, Corey Steelcutter is making me eat my words for that, but I'm pretty sure that the Kirin is the second best card in the set. And
it's a very good one.
You're talking about an uncommon with flash flying that does this ability, right? For 2 mana. And so this is just another type of that effect to bounce the cards that care about when they enter, make your opponent lose life, discard a card. So I'm curious if this gets solidifies why you don't have to play Esper anymore. Before the Esper version or version playing with blue was playing Fear of Isolation. And so that was a 2/3 enchantment that said as you cast it, you pick something back up, but also was subject to enchantment removal. This card is not subject to enchantment removal, but the downside is that it doesn't have flying. However, the Kirin says you pick up a non-Kirin creature, right? So this is a bird. The Pixie also can pick this up and put a +1/+1 counter on it, so you can keep picking up and putting down these types of effects to give your things +1/+1 counters or additional abilities or something like this. But it is a 2/2 with flash, and that matters for a number of reasons, right? You can flash this guy in the block, flash this guy in the end step, pick up your card, have another attacker. The Pixie deck all cares about that incremental damage that you deal with cards like Hopeless Nightmare. And they are also taking advantage of cards like Shoulder of the Apocalypse now. Some are playing Archfiend of the Dross to try to fight against the red decks a little bit more. This being able to pick up an Archfiend is huge, so that way you don't accidentally lose the game from it losing all the oil counters. I don't want to say that I'm tired of printing this effect in the Standard. I don't think that's the correct terminology that I want to use. But it is clear that the Pixie deck was a front runner before Dragonstorm Standard, and it hasn't really fallen off. But the reason it's sort of taken a backseat is because of the powerhouse of Corey Steelcutter and, Is It Prowess decks.
Mm-hmm.
If something should happen to the Is It Prowess deck in Standard, and we wouldn't know until June 30th if any action is taken against any Standard cards, which who knows, then I think the Pixie deck rises to the forefront again, to be very honest. And so this card would help strengthen that deck.
Yeah,
I'm curious,
no,
y'all who are watching this on YouTube, comment below, what do you think about them continuing to put this type of an effect in the Standard? When lots of folks seemed to have been very annoyed by the Hopeless Nightmare Pixie decks previous to Corey Steelcutter's rise. Curious on y'all's opinion on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely want to get the temperature on that because, I know. A sentiment that I've heard referenced a lot, and I know I definitely feel myself, is that deck can be very tedious to battle. Because, as long as they draw one Hopeless Nightmare, it could resolve on you 3 to 5 times in a game fairly easily.
Yep.
And, Man, that is tough to deal with. Like, it's just the amount of value that gets, and it generating card advantage by repeatedly recasting. I mean, we're talking about buying back, right? Like, that deck is just buy back the deck. And I think these kind of effects, like Ambrosia Whiteheart is a perfectly fine card. It is a fair card. There's nothing problematic about this card. I think it's the fact that Nowhere to Run, Hopeless Nightmare, and Momentum Breaker all coexist at the same time as this effect. That's I think, I don't know, for me, that's definitely the frustration. And I think you're right. I think we would absolutely see a resurgence of this if it, if anything were to happen and there was some kind of perfect tech against the Corey Steele decks, or if any kind of ban action is taken, which, who knows. But that said, though, one of the details about this design, though, more cards like the Sun Pearl Kieran and Ambrosia Whiteheart that are creatures with ETBs, all of a sudden, Torpor Orb would actually work to potentially combat this deck. Whereas in the past, when they were running Fear of Isolation is a cast trigger. It's an additional, or not even a trigger, it's an additional cost. And so there was no way to interact with that. And so Torpor Orb really only hit like 4 cards in the Esper version of the deck, or certainly not enough to be meaningful. Whereas if an Orzhov version of this is running 4 Nurturing Pixie, 4 the Sun Pearl Kieran, and like 2 Ambrosia Whitehearts or something because they're legendary, all of a sudden, if that's the way that they're bouncing their stuff, Torpor Orb could actually hurt that deck in a meaningful way. And so we have some sideboard options to maybe combat that. That sounds okay as far as I'm concerned. Sounds great. I like that idea. So if that's the form that it takes in the future, I feel like we're going to be, even in a post temporary lockdown world, which is right now kind of the best hope for dealing with that. But that's interesting. But yeah, clearly this kind of design is something that Wizards seems to like, and we're gonna keep seeing it. It seems so. Here we are. Yeah. All right. So moving on. Let's go on. Sticking in white. Let's go ahead and look at Machinist's Arsenal. Yeah, Machinist Arsenal. I think that's how you pronounce that. Anyway, it's a 5-drop equipment with an ability called Job Select. There are a number of cards in the set with Job Select, which a trope in the Final Fantasy games is the fact that you can give the different characters jobs. It's basically their class, and they're represented through all these equipments. So there's like the White Mage's staff, Black Mage's staff, that kind of thing. So Machinist Arsenal, it has Job Select. And the way that it works in Magic is whenever this equipment enters, you make a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, then attach this to it. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 for each artifact you control and is an artificer in addition to its other types. And it has Machina equip 4. So, yeah, you can. So it has equip 4. Yeah. And +2/+2 for each artifact you control.
This is probably my second favorite card in this set. That's because I am a Simulacrum Synthesizer enjoyer, that insane mythic that is worth like $50+ in paper. That is from the big score from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. The card that says when a artifact that costs 3 or more enters, you get to create a construct whose power toughness is equal to the number of artifacts you control. Remember that card? Well, in Aether Drift, they printed a card called Repurposing Bay, which essentially is a birthing pod for artifacts, right? It is a 3-drop. You can pay 2. You sack an artifact. You go get an artifact that costs 1 more than what you sacked, and you put it in play, right? Now, this deck has, gone in between different variants. Some were taking advantage of, the Lost Caverns of Ixalan artifacts, like Clay-Fired Bricks, searches you for a land, or the 2-mana taps for a white mana for an artifact spell artifact. To me, all of those cards fit with this. And being able to Repurposing Bay out a 4-drop to find this card, which gets you a creature that gets buffed for all of the artifacts that you have out already, is crazy. Granted, it doesn't give trample or anything like that, so it's a fair card. But if you have Synthesizer out and you Repurposing Bay your 4-drop away to get a 5-drop that gets you another creature, you're also triggering the Simulacrum Synthesizer, getting another creature. This becomes bigger. At worst, if you have no other artifacts out for some reason, let's say your opponent is cheating and they have Brothers at end and they've wiped your Simulacrum Synthesizers, right? You still cast this card for 5. You still get a 3/3, and any artifact that you play after the fact is going to continue to go up. And quite frankly, 4 mana cost for equip is super fair, but also super payable out of that deck. You get to play like Mightstone and Weakstone and things that might get you Power Stones, right? That tap for colorless mana. But I really like this card a lot. So I'm curious about its playability in Standard. I think it might only fit in that particular deck, though. But that deck has started to make a couple waves here and there out there, even though we are in an aggressive sort of metagame.
Yeah, absolutely. It does read. I mean, like a lot of good artifact payoffs, it's a little narrow, but yeah, I think you're exactly right. The other one the first thing I thought of with this is whenever I'm evaluating a card like this, I'm trying to see, okay, what's it doing? At the end of the day, this is putting on just a ton of stats onto the battlefield. And honestly, the Simulacrum Synthesizer deck doesn't really need any more stats once it's doing its thing. Mm-hmm. However, Surge Engine is still a thing. And
That's right.
If you're in a board stall, if you have this little 2-drop that may have not been worth it previously, but it's late in the game, and you can repurposing Bay, sacrifice like a Solemn Simulacrum or a Hedron Archive that you have lying around, and go pull this out. If it's late enough, you probably have enough mana to just immediately equip this to your Surge Engine, which is now unblockable and enormous. And so no matter what other blockers your opponent has down, unless they can remove that, that's GG's. So it can give you an angle, potentially, if you have an evasive threat on the board. There's also there's a blue creature with flying with affinity from artifacts that I believe is also a 5-drop from Aether Drift as well. So that's a flyer that could pick this up and get in for lethal as well. Yeah. The stat boost that this is going to provide in that deck is going to be obscene. It's going to be absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. And I really like Job Select. I mean, one thing I liked about Phyrexia will be one was like the 4 Mirrodin cards, right? Mm-hmm. Just an equipment that creates a creature and auto attaches. We had that back in the day with Germ tokens, also around Mirrodin blocks, and those cards were all super playable. So there are some commons and uncommons that have this Job Select triggered ability to automatically get you a creature. And I really like to see here. I think this card has lots of potential.
Absolutely. Yeah, I dig it. Good stuff. All right, so keeping it in the equipment realm, let's talk about the sword itself. The Buster Sword is in this set. Because of course it is. They're doing a Final Fantasy set. I think that's the first thing we all knew was coming. Mm-hmm. So the Buster Sword, it is a 3-drop equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+2. It equips for 2. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to that damage without paying its mana cost.
Not
mana
legendary.
Advantage, card advantage, potentially. Is this good enough to see play?
I think it's incredibly fair, right? Mm-hmm. We see a 3 mana equipment, and Buster Sword is not legendary. There are lots of legendary equipments in this set, by the way. So +3/+2 is a fine stat boost, right? Mm-hmm. Equipping it for 2 mana seems fine. But you have to deal the combat damage to a player, and this doesn't give any type of evasion, right? Whereas you see cards, the first thing that came to my mind, sorry, because I've been playing a lot of Visit Prowess, is Drake Hatcher. Because Drake Hatcher says it gets incubation counters equal to the damage that it's dealt to your opponent. And so typically you need to play like Monstrous Rage, which is a super fair card, on the Drake Hatcher to trample over with evasion to get incubations to get Drakes, right? This card doesn't do any of those things unless you are playing something that gives the creature some type of evasion, right? You probably wouldn't play Buster Sword in a Monstrous Rage deck, I would imagine. So I'm curious what type of deck wants this, and then what is then worth it to cast for free out of your hand, right? So it makes you want to have to pay mana to play it, pay mana to equip it, pay additional mana to give something evasion, and then magically you have enough cards in your hand to cast something for free. I think it's just difficult to do, right? Not saying that the card is good or bad. It might just take some tinkering and build around with it to figure out what I want to cast. Because if I want to cast a card for free, I don't want to out of my hand. I want it to be a very unfair card, where it's got to be like some super duper payoff. So like, if we're being fair, and I'm casting this on turn 3, right? That means on turn 4, I'm equipping it to maybe a 3-power creature. Maybe I get in for 6 damage. What's the best thing I can do for 6 mana for free out of my hand? Trumpeting Carnosaur? That also discovers into another spell? That sounds kind of good, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, what do you discover into? Another Buster Sword? Can I equip my Trumpeting Carnosaur with a Buster Sword? That sounds visualizes
like
to
fun.
be something kind of fun. Yeah, right?
I don't know if it's good, but it's fun. Yeah.
yeah. Can I cast, like, I don't know, hit the Mother Load and then discover into something else? I don't know that those cards fit in a Buster Sword deck, but they're the unfair spells that I want to cast for free out of my hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think the card is okay. We just need some build around it is all.
Yeah, and it's funny because actually, I agree with everything you're saying, but I don't know. I look at this and I actually think I would rather put it in a mid range deck where throwing it onto a 1/1 and just supercharging that attack with like a decent 4-drop in my hand. Like, because if I can free cast a Shelter of the Apocalypse, I'm going to and not feel bad about it. Yeah. But at the same time, is that worth running? Because at that point, yeah, it's free casting, but I'm paying a total mana investment of 5 to set that up, and that's not worth it. Like, it's just not. So unless there's some way to get equipment going relatively inexpensively, like, I feel like this is a solid piece of equipment in a deck that really wants a piece of equipment. And that seems fine. And how many amazing like Boros commanders have come through Standard that are legal right now that that would really benefit from just having any decent playable equipment. Like, all of a sudden, is Jor Kadeen gonna finally be like meaningful after 2.5 years? Probably not. But like, it's a consideration at least.
Astor from Dominaria United is the first creature that comes to my mind anytime I see a piece of equipment, because I'm like, Astor, 2 a white and a red, that makes your equip cost only cost 1, right? And so, like, I want to play this card, and, like, why not? It seems fine. It's just too fair, right?
Right.
I mean, to go alongside it, though, I mean, Cloud has, like, 20 cards in Final Fantasy. Yeah, that's an exaggeration. But the standard legal Cloud... Midgard Mercenary is 2 white for a 2/1 that lets you search for an equipment. So very flavorfully, Cloud searches for Buster Sword, puts Buster Sword in your hand, and then Cloud's secondary ability, I think, says if it's equipped... Oh, you have it on screen.
Yeah, as long as it's equipped.
Yeah. If an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, trigger the ability an additional time. So you get to cast 2 spells for free. So let's say Cloud attacks and connects for 5, right? Which is what Cloud probably is going to do, right? +3/+2, 2/1. Your opponent doesn't have a blocker. They take 5. So you get to cast 2 spells out of your hand for free. So you're going that cheaper route, right? So what are the payoffs, like in the same deck that Cloud is connecting with Buster Sword, that you want to cast that's 5 or less? Elspeth, which gets you tokens. Elspeth, which then gives Cloud evasion, right? Because it can give it +1/+1 and flying.
Yep.
Is something that comes to my mind. You could play something like Virtue of Loyalty, which is also a 2-mana card, get you like a 2/2 Vigilance Knight, which isn't a bad equipped target for Buster Sword. You could cast it for 5, untap your Cloud, put a counter on it, so now Cloud just gets bigger and it lets you cast bigger spells. Like, it's cards like this that sort of come to my mind, and that means you have to be like some type of a good white mid-range strategy.
Yeah, I like that. The other one that I can't help but think of that actually would work with all these cards you're talking about as well is Kemba, Ka Enduring from Phyrexia LB1. It's a cat that auto-equips when it enters, and whenever another cat enters, it can auto-equip. So Kemba, Arabo, some of those other cat payoffs, which a lot of those are good 2 and 3 drop cards where I'd be happy to free cast those out of my hand and just, kind of value snowball. That's an interesting, kind of a mono white go wide Cloud cat sword deck. Like, and that's an interesting idea. And all right, we're gonna have to tinker with this.
The 4 Mirrodin cards are still legal, so you could play the uncommon. Its name's escaping me, but it's like 1 a white and a red, and gives your equipped creature double strike. Then it reduces equip costs of cards, right?
Yep, the Bladehold War Whip.
Yes, there you go.
The War Whip.
There was an equipment deck that was red-white that was playing Kemba not too long ago. Cloud gets into there pretty well. Buster Sword. It was also playing Lava Spur Boots, which gives your creature haste in Ward 1. And I love that strategy, but none of those are payoff cards to like want to cast with Buster Sword. Right? I mean, it's just like you're casting another piece of equipment, or you're casting like another creature, and maybe that's enough. That's what this deck wants to do. I just like the bigger payoff cards.
I respect that. Yeah. Well, but it's funny though, because a lot of those 5-drop payoffs, you do have this question of like, well, why would I run them in a low to the ground deck? It's like, well, because I could free cast them off my sword. That's why.
Right.
And maybe that's where this card fits. Is it helps kind of shore up that. It allows you to play expensive payoffs in an otherwise kind of low to the ground aggressive deck. I'm okay with that. I think that's fun. Cool. Well, that was a fun little bit of discovery that we had there. I'm here for it.
And imagine, I know we're talking about Standard, but the other thing that like comes to my mind of wanting to play like Cloud that we showed you is like playing that in a Stoneforge Mystic deck. In Modern, right? Get Cloud and Stoneforge Mystic that search you up equipments, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, Cloud Midgard Mercenary definitely reads. You could use this alongside cards like Helm of the Host or all. I need the Sword of X and Y, all that stuff. Like with him, it looks amazing. So yeah, if you like equipment, Cloud Midgard Mercenary, you really ought to be on your radar because
just give me a nice piece of artwork where Cloud is wielding the Sword of Fire and Ice. That's all I want.
Yes.
Draw me this art, please.
Amazing. I love it. I have no doubt altarists all over are working on that right now. Amazing. I also love the fact that the Buster Sword isn't legendary. Like the very first thing I thought of was a character like I'm envisioning like Mabel or something, like running into battle holding 2 and then 1 in the teeth, like One Piece style. I love this. Yeah,
it's interesting because before they previewed Buster Sword, they previewed the Final Fantasy Secret Layers that are coming out on June 9th. And there is a reskinned Umezawa's Jite that is Buster Sword. And it's legendary, and it's been causing tons of controversy. We already know that card is legendary. But Buster Sword itself is not in the set. So I'm curious why they use this as sort of like the reskinned version of that card, if the actual Buster Sword is not legendary.
Well, I do appreciate the fact that it's called Cloud's Buster Sword, but I believe Buster Sword is just an item. It's like the starting weapon that he has, and I believe you can just loot him. I think some other beings some other like soldiers in that setting do just have them. It is just a standard weapon. It's just he's very popular for wielding one. But yeah, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah,
I might have that wrong. It's been longer than I care to admit since I played Final Fantasy VII. All right, but one that I actually a game that I just recently played on my stream was Final Fantasy VI, And a character from that I did not expect to see get a card is Go-Go. And in Magic, they're called Go-Go, Master of Mimicry, which is, so this is a legendary wizard, 2/4 for 2 and a blue, with the ability XX, tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control X times. You may choose new targets for the copies. This ability can't be copied, and X can't be 0. Oh, dude, I'm incredibly jealous, I assure you. Of course, I mean, as our resident doppelgang, correspondent, I have to ask, how do you feel about this big X copy thing? Well, how do we feel about this?
It's incredibly fair, right? Anytime you see a card that has more than one X on the mana cost or for an ability, it's a fair card. Surely there's no way you can break it and make it unfair. I don't know. I don't know that the card is standard playable, given, again, the aggressive nature of standard that we're in right now. It does notably copy Planeswalker abilities, which is what I am interested in the most, being the resident Planeswalker player.
Yep.
And copies said abilities X time. So, like, can I just Jace Perfected Mind and copy the ability twice without having, like, another Jace out? Like, I can pay 4 and -5 the Jace and mill you 45 cards. Like, that's what I want to do with this card. I don't know if it's doable or that it's good, but I surely want to try it.
I mean, if you play Go-Go on 3, Jace on 4, and manage to untap with both of those, I mean, what?
GG, right?
What's the opponent expecting, right? Like, of course, yeah.
Just on Arena, they have the cog in the top right corner. You just click that, and you click the concede button.
That's all you gotta do.
There.
Yeah. If you manage to actually stick both of those and have them survive, you earned it, Doc. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean that's what comes to my mind with this card, because immediately Go-Go Jank. It's a Jank card, Jank Brewer's Paradise. Copy whatever you want. If your opponent doesn't have Go for the Throat or like shoot the sheriff or whatever, or get lost and Go-Go lives a turn, you should be playing something in your deck that makes your opponent lose the next turn. Right?
Yes.
Or lose 2 turns from now or whatever. Notably, this also is able to do it with triggered abilities too. So if you have like some crazy ability like, I don't know, Itali, and you want to copy Itali's ability, God knows how many times, off the Go-Go, you can do that, and that's totally jankable and doable too.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to these double X's, I know whenever I look at a cost that high, if I'm looking at a card like Doppelgang or Mass Manipulation or anything like this, the bottom line to me comes down to, okay, if X is 1, is it worth it? Because that's what it's going to be more often than not. And in this case, pay 2, tap, copy an ability. Yeah. Like that's on rate. I'm good with that. And the first thing I thought of was like fetch lands, and things like that where,
Oh, sure, yeah.
So it's not a very exciting rate, and the fact that it's coming off the back of a 3-drop, that's probably not worth it. But I don't know. There's probably a time I've seen people use the Virtue of Knowledge, the Arden Veil fealty or whatever that is, the ability there to copy. I've seen that on Fabled Passage before on turn 3, where people will drop a Fabled Passage and crack it to ramp themselves, and if you're getting other value, and that being one line that you could theoretically do, neat. Like, that's a cool idea. That definitely feels more like a commander line than something I'd ever try in standard, but, Go-Go gives you those kinds of opportunities, so.
The other plus of, like, all of these legendary creatures in Final Fantasy is they all have enters abilities, so Go-Go can pair with any of those cards. Also pairing very well with the different sagas that are in this set, and copying those triggered abilities is amazing. Cards that I think of, one that's from the set is green. I think it's called Summon Titan. Pretty sure they previewed that card. It's like a 5-mana card. It mills 5 on chapter 1. Chapter 2, it returns all your lands from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Now, you don't have to cop any of those, but milling the 5 cards and copying is pretty good. And then the third ability is until end of turn, another target creature you control gains trample +X, where X is the number of lands you control. There's no mana to trigger these abilities on the saga. So you could copy that third chapter ability with Go-Go X times and give that ability to multiple creatures that you have on the battlefield and kill your opponent. Like, it's sweet in terms of playability.
Yeah, little
Both
DIY
from a
creator hoof
limited
here.
perspective. Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
And you could even copy Creator Host ability if you really
Sure,
want.
why not?
I mean, let's say that you have that much mana. Sure, do it. Why not?
It's a bit excessive, but yeah, why not? If you can, go for that high score. Yeah, but I like you're calling out Planeswalkers and Sagas. I think is really on point because those are abilities that you can activate, so you have control over, or you can time them. You can see them coming, and you can have all of your mana available when they're on the stack, and that is really important because copying an ETB, if you have to spend 4 mana to play a creature that has an ETB trigger, I mean, yeah, it's not unreasonable to have 2 mana back, but you'd have to ramp pretty hard if you want to hit Go-Go for more than 1 in that kind of a situation. But yeah, sagas that have been around for a turn or planeswalkers that you can then, I think a planeswalker that has a good, solid like -2 or even a +1 that, you want to copy multiple times, or like Go-Go with Elspeth, the 5 mana Elspeth, that 0, put a 1/1 counter and, and a flying counter on all your dudes, just all your mana, just crank that like up to 11. Like, I don't know, those kind of opportunities are pretty neat. So I like it. Also, I feel the need to just call this out. Whenever you see a creature that has a colon in the text box, you can put this under Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So the opportunity for some kind of insane Rube Goldberg machine combo with that. I mean, it's Soul Cauldron. Like
go into the soup.
Those just exist. So yeah, Go-Go could be an ingredient in your soup. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. That is one of those cards where I wouldn't be surprised if people are finding new tech for that thing years from now. And I'm here for it. I think it's a fun piece added to the game. All right. Let's keep going with, well, I don't have a good segue for this one. Traveling Chocobo. Here's this card is one of the big crazy chase cards from the set. And actually, I even pulled the one that I'm showing on the YouTube video is the green artwork. They did the Hitotsugu treatment from Neon Dynasty is something similar to that, where they have various colors of traveling chocobos, which makes sense if you think about it, because in Final Fantasy VII, you can breed chocobos of various colors, with, I believe, gold being the top tier. And there is, in fact, I believe, a serialized gold chocobo in the set.
77 of them. Oh, yeah.
Let's go. It's the big chase mythic. And so the Traveling Chocobo is a 3/2 for 2 and a green. It's a legendary bird. Or no, sorry, it's not legendary. It's just a bird. It's not legendary. Let's take a Force of Habit. That just came out. But it says you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast bird spells from the top of your library. If a land or bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time.
Yeah. So, interestingly, a lot of your birds cards are in Bant colors, so white, blue, green. And there is a legendary chocobo, at least I think it's a chocobo. It's literally called Choco in the set, right? Is like 1 and Bant colors. And it is a legendary bird, right? And so it says whenever you cast... Wait, hold on.
Whenever one or more birds
you control
attack.
Yeah. You look at the top whatever cards of your library, and you can put a land in your hand. Is that what it does?
Yeah, put one of them in one of the cards. Just one of the cards into your hand. Then you put any number of lands from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest into your graveyard.
Yeah, so like Traveling Chocobo into this lets you get 2 triggered abilities of Choco, right? And granted, neither of these Chocobo happen to fly. I don't know what happened, but a lot of the birds don't fly in this set. It's interesting.
Chocobos don't fly.
Chocobos in general don't.
No,
all right,
yeah, chocobos are
not understanding.
Yeah, they're similar to. I think there might be like 1 or 2 throughout the entire franchise, but generally they're flightless, similar to like ostriches.
Okay. Yeah. So, Traveling Chocobo into this doubles that triggered ability. You can cast Choco off the top of your deck. We talked about Ambrosia. I mean, also works with like picking up a Chocobo, recasting a Chocobo onto the battlefield, which seems sweet. But other cards that work well with this, in Standard, I think you have. What else is a really good bird?
Well, here's
Maybe there's no other like.
so we have a lot of cool
There's
birds.
the 5-drop from this set. The 5-drop that makes your birds fight. It's like it is a legendary. It's in fact I think it's like 3 and double green, which hits like on curve amazingly. Bartz and Boko is a legendary human bird. It's 3 double green for a 4/3 with affinity for birds. And so, obviously, if you have 2 other birds on the battlefield, this card only costs you 3. When Bartz and Boko enter, each other bird you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature and opponent controls. Doesn't fight, they bite. So I don't know if in the game of Chocobos bite, but they certainly bite in this one, and it turns your creatures on the battlefield into removal spells, which I think is incredible. So if you got like 2 other creatures into this, 3 creatures are removing 3 other creatures from the battlefield, or some combination. Imagine you having Bartz and Boko enter the battlefield, and your Chocobo destroy Shieldred the Apocalypse. Hell yeah, that is flavor.
That seems good. That seems real good. And right now, I mean, one of my commanders is gonna. I have a commander deck right now built around Castrol the Windcrested, and that's probably going to become a Choco deck like day one. Like I'm probably just going to take this Azorius Bird deck, add green, put some Chocobos in there, and go, because it just fits perfectly. To the point where it's funny. We were talking about on my chat before Choco, or actually I think it was like the morning that Choco got previewed. We were talking about all the Chocobos because there were a couple of the green Chocobos had been previewed, and I don't recall if Traveling Chocobo had been previewed at that point, but a couple of the other ones had. And I even said flat out, like, man, I really hope that there's just some good Bant legend that will, that fits a good bird deck. And then Choco got previewed. Like, nailed it. Yeah. All right, great. Because Azorius Birds has been a supported archetype throughout the game's history for decades now. And we've seen that, Castrol the Windcrested being a 4/5 bird that cares about birds dealing damage to an opponent. Like, this has been the thing. And so the moment they add birds in green, like, well, you got to give me a Bant commander. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And Wizards understood the assignment and they delivered, and now all of a sudden we have this green bird support. Sorry, I'm all over the place here, which is, kind of wild, and I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. I love birds in this game, and the fact that they're expanding on the mechanical identity of that creature type, I think is cool. I'm excited to give it a shot. The other thing about Traveling Chocobo specifically that I want to mention, which is unfortunate from the dollars and cents perspective for bird lovers out there, you don't have to have other birds for this card to be genuinely amazing. If you think Oracle of Moldiah is a good card, then this is a good card, because you can play lands from the top of your deck. And you're also looking at them. You're not playing with it revealed, and it doubles all of your landfall triggers. So even if you don't have any other bird ETB triggers, which, if you're running Bartz and Boko, that gets crazy, which is beautiful, of course. But even if you're not, even if it's just landfall triggers, if you're hitting landfall triggers off this and doubling them, I mean, all of a sudden you have this Oracle of Moldiah land Harmonicon, and like, for 3 mana, that's nuts. Like, it just is.
Yeah. Yeah, and from a most basic perspective, I mean, we saw, forgive me if I pronounce their name incorrectly, Saz Chocobo?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the name correctly.
Neither am I, so let's go with it.
That's the 1 green 0/1 with landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, put a counter on this. So this at uncommon, you're like, oh, this 0/1 you pay for a green doesn't do anything. It's going to get cut down. Yeah, it's true. But, you can play, you figure your land 2, play, I don't know,
Bristly Bill on 2.
Right? And then, Bristly Bill. I mean, that would also be a great card in this landfall deck. And then on 3, you play Traveling Chocobo, and then from there, I mean, this card just grows like incrementally. Well,
and then you can go Gruul with it, and you can go Gruul with it, and your 2-drop could be Zeldinch, which gives you an additional land drop. Or is he a 2-drop or 3-drop?
3-drop.
I thought. Oh, he's a 3-drop. Never mind.
3-drop, yeah.
All right. I thought I was cooking there, but nope. Sorry. But regardless, the potential for big craziness is absolutely here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was a firm believer in Fearless Fledgling, by the way, back in Zendikar Rising. So Zaz's Chocobo being basically just that, but kind of better. Yeah, seems pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here for it. And speaking of awesome landfall cards that could easily fit in that deck, we also got Tifa Lockhart. Of course she was going to be here. She is a 1/2 with trample for 2, 1 in a green. With landfall, whenever a land you control enters, double Tifa's power until end of turn.
Yeah,
that's
so
lands
this
entering
works really well alongside of travel of. Oh, there's a card that lets you play an additional land. What is it? Maybe I'm just thinking about Splunking, right? If you play Tifa into land, Splunking, play other land, you get to double the attack power twice. That's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this card. I'm like, oh, great. So I just need something on turn 3 that lets me play that additional land drop. But also, you got to try to, like, buff this power.
Yeah. But, yeah, in an environment where we have, I think Splunking is a great call. Because, yeah, Tifa on 2. Oh, that's our 2-drop, I guess. So, yeah, Saz's Chocobo on 1, Tifa on 2. Like, you know, Splunking on 3 into a Traveling Chocobo. Or, like, Nissa, Resurgent Animist on 3. Yeah. I mean, the landfall package right now, like, it's pretty nuts. And you could also trigger, like, if you do have Bristly Bill down, the counters could be resolving before Tifa's ability, and so the doubling will count the counters. And if it's Tifa on 2 into a Spelunking on 3, and you drop a Fabled Passage and crack it, the amount of punch that she's bringing to the table is pretty sick. So yeah. You could do some good work here, and she natively has trample, so yeah. So I think landfall aggro could easily be a thing.
And you know, people hate on Monstrous Rage, but man, like this card alongside of Monstrous Rage is Nutter Butters. I mean, granted, it already has the trample, but you know, for 1 red, you have to cast a pre-combat Monstrous Rage, or pre-combat and pre-land. Right, so if you play Tifa on 2 and you rage it, you go draw, don't play your land, Monstrous Rage this thing, it's 4 power, play the land, goes to 8 power.
Well, or if you have 2 buffs in your hand, so if it's like Turn Inside Out and Monstrous Rage, then hit a land. I mean...
So it's 3, 6, 7, land, 14 damage on turn 3, off Tifa.
That seems good. Yeah. Seems good. And if that land is a Fabled Passage, again, I just gotta keep mentioning that. If you crack
your opponent's dead. Actually dead.
They're so dead. And on top of that, you also have Escape Tunnel legal in the format right now, which is one of those fetch lands which lines up and does all the things that we're talking about, but you could also save it back and give Tifa unblockable and then buff the crap out of her. Like, that's an option too. So,
Monstrous Rage is a completely fair Magic card. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's totally cool. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nothing to see here. It's all good. So yeah, and you know, Tifa alongside Traveling Chocobo can double these triggers with what is it? The town tutor that we talked about earlier, Reach the Horizon.
Reach the Horizon.
All of those things, all of a sudden. I mean, I've been playing a little bit with Temur Landfall myself, and so the idea of leaning green, like going even harder into that, and then all of a sudden, like a mono green aggressive landfall deck with, you know, we have these, and then Lumbering World Wagon is also just like quietly really stinking good. Yeah.
Speaking of mono green landfall, they also previewed an uncommon enchantment. And again, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but it's called Ride the Shipoof or Shipuff. And it's 1 in a green, an enchantment with landfall. It says whenever a land you control enters, put a counter on a creature you can control. And then you could pay 7 to make it into a 7/7 beast in addition to its other types.
So Roaring Earth is back.
Yeah.
All right. Amazing.
Yeah.
Except with like cutesy artwork. I'm here for it.
And plus we still have Innkeeper's Talent. Obviously that's standard legal. That also comes to mind in a Tifa deck, right? Being able to give Tifa ward, extra +1/+1 counters that are there forever.
Oh yeah.
Seems fine to me.
This seems
I'm
fantastic.
hoping, I'm excited for the Final Fantasy cards, but I'm really hoping that we actually see a standard deck with Bristly Bill in it, because that card is significantly underplayed, I think, because the amount of removal that just easily gets it off the battlefield. But it's really strong.
Oh yeah.
I think Bristly Bill, even like its price point, because it's really played in Commander, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I see Bristly Bill Brawl decks all the time in Arena.
All the time. It's
Bristly Bill Spine Sower is like a $35 card, $30 card, roughly.
I believe it.
Depends what version you have. It's crazy. It's a fantastic card. Hopefully, we get to see this card played in Standard.
Yeah,
And it works perfectly alongside of Tifa. So.
Absolutely. I think right now it's kind of unfortunate that the red-based decks are being, having to be checked so much because, Bristly Bill and a lot of these green decks are kind of catching strays because the answers to those decks answers this deck. But I agree, Bristly Bill, I've played Bill in a couple of decks, and he overperforms, like, he exceeds my expectations almost every single time. Like, card's insane.
It's almost like you have to play these cards alongside of cards like Snakeskin Veil and Tyvar Stand or whatever, just so your creatures don't die to removal, because if your opponent can't kill them, they're killing you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, you just have to play it a little differently, because waiting until turn 3 to drop Bristly Bill and then follow it up with a land if the opponent tries to cut down having a Snakeskin, back, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's just kind of what you have to do, and when you have to jump through that many hoops, is it worth it? Right. I don't know. But between Saz's Chocobo and Tifa and the Traveling Chocobo, like, the amount of just action and power in the first few turns that deck now has access to. Right now, I feel like Bristly Bill and Mossborn Hydra are both in this weird spot where you really have to just sort of like stick them and pray that the opponent doesn't have anything. And now having just more options and more threats, because there's now a 1-drop in Saz's Chocobo that the opponent needs to remove. It's like, well, okay. And if they do, then when you play out Bill, that's one fewer piece of removal that they have in their hand. They haven't seen that many cards yet, so maybe Bill survives all of a sudden. And if Bill doesn't, Tifa probably will. Or, or however it lines up. The critical mass of early threats that deck now has access to might help it kind of push over the top and become a player all of a sudden. And I think that'd be fun to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, something you haven't mentioned yet, which I am very surprised that you haven't, given the reanimator enjoyer that you are. You have not mentioned Summon Knights of Round.
I've not.
Our discussion today.
That's correct.
And the reason I said the reanimator enjoyer that you are is because I think it's in the reanimator deck is where this card has to live, because otherwise it costs 8 mana. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, a bunch of the sagas, all of the sagas, I think, in Final Fantasy, are also enchantment creatures. So it's the first of its kind. So Knights of Round is an 8 mana 3/3 indestructible. Okay. On chapters 1 through 4, it creates 3 2/2 White Knight creature tokens. And on chapter 5, Ultimate End, says other creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Put an indestructible counter on each of them. And this card is indestructible. So, I'm thinking, right off the bat, I think of Zombify from Foundations, right? Because we have that card that's legal in Standard for 5 years. If you pitch Summon Knights of Round to your yard, or mill it, or do whatever, I mean, discarding it's very easy. You play cards like Bitter Triumph and stuff to ditch it. On turn 4, you have no problem zombifying this out. This gets you 4 creatures on the battlefield for 1 zombify right away, one of which is indestructible. So, let's say your opponent follows up with Day of Judgment or Split Up. It doesn't matter, because this card just creates 3 more creatures on the next turn. I think this card is actually insane. I don't know about you.
It is pretty fun.
As much as I love reanimating cards like Atraxa and Valgavoth and whatever, like this is my jam right here. I'm playing this card.
I can appreciate that. And you're right. It is definitely the kind of thing. Oh, and all of a sudden, too, if you're reanimating, if you're doing this kind of a setup, Moonshaker Cavalry all of a sudden looks really, really tasty alongside this as another reanimation target for after you've set this up. Yeah. This card is interesting because I have a... So Knights of the Round is one of the summons that you can get in Final Fantasy VII. And I have to be honest, I played through Final Fantasy VII and never unlocked it. So feel free. I'm going to hand in my nerd card right here, everybody. I know. But it's one of those where I have a traumatic past with Knights of the Round, but you're not wrong. This Magic card rules. It's very, very strong. It works well with blinking. And the other cool thing about the idea of reanimating a saga creature is really interesting because they put themselves back in the graveyard. And so
right.
If somehow your opponent manages to weather the storm, maybe they didn't give up on Sunfall alongside everybody else. Well, Sunfall wouldn't, it would have to be after the last one resolved. But regardless, if they somehow manage to fog long enough to hold out, you can just re-up it. And that's that idea just makes me incredibly happy. I think this is it is very, very powerful. What you're getting here is no joke. And it also, you put an indestructible counter on every other creature you control at the end here. All of them. Not just the knights that this produced. Every creature that you have becomes an indestructible creature.
You're probably playing Overlord of the Baelmerk, maybe Overlord of the Mistmoors too, because that's a great reanimation target too, right? Yep. So just making all of those creatures indestructible is a good time.
I'm also wondering if there are any good proliferate cards still left for in white that could. I don't think so.
In white, I don't think so. In blue, yes.
Yeah.
From Phyrexia, all will be one, blue and black.
I mean, Whispers of the Dross. All of a sudden, to be able to just keep ticking this thing up.
Yep.
That kind of an idea seems really fun to me.
And the green white cards in this set are the ones that care about lore counters and sagas. I believe they previewed Garnet.
Yep.
And if that's not how you pronounce the name, let me know. Princess of Alexandria. Yeah, it's an uncommon, right? It's a 2/2 for a green and a white with lifelink. When it attacks, you may remove a lore counter from each of any number of sagas you control. And you put a counter on Garnet for each lore counter removed this way. So that means you set it back a chapter, so you get to redo the chapter again. Now, whether or not you could do this alongside of Knights of the Round, probably not. 2 mana versus 8 mana card from a limited perspective. But who knows?
But maybe. It's not crazy. I love the design on Garnet as well. The other detail from a lore perspective that I appreciate, Garnet and Yuna as well, is also in this same kind of limited archetype. And they care about sagas because the sagas represent the summon creatures, in the games. And Garnet and Yuna are both summoners within the game. So they're literally, bringing forth these creatures. And so them interacting with them just fits. They got that right flavorfully.
Imagine having out Yuna with Knights of Round, because then the actual Knights of Round creature, so Yuna costs 3 a green and a white, right? 3/5. It's a mythic in the set. During your turn, Yuna and enchantment creatures you control have trample, lifelink, and ward 2. Let's just add more text. And then at the beginning of your end step, return up to 1 target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So in green-white, you can reanimate Knights of Round.
There we go. So Yuna reanimates Knights of Round and you call it good. Yeah, there you go. You don't even need black in the mix. Boom.
It's crazy. Can we could play an Abzan reanimated deck. We got perfect mana in Standard. You could zombify Yuna, reanimate on the end step your Knights of Round.
I love this so
much.
Meanwhile,
my opponents are casting Rest in Peace against me, and they're cheaters.
I know, right? Yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, exactly. I'm 100% on board with all of this. Yeah. So tune into the streamer event for us tinkering with that, because that's gonna happen. Oh my goodness, incredible.
Also, I'll also have you note that the sagas, so Knights of Round, for example, is not legendary, so I can doppelgang it. Just so you know.
You sure can. Because I know that's what you need once Summon Knights of Round is out, is you need more tokens, clearly.
More Knights of Round, more tokens.
And we've already seen, I don't know if anyone's tuned into your stream, they've probably seen you like doppelgang X equals 3 targeting an Overlord of the Mistmores. Like, they know how stupid it gets. And
in fact, I'll tell you, last night on stream, I doppelganged X equals 5, and I copied Doubling Season, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, what else? Ancient Cornucopia, and my opponent's 6/6 Demon, and Unholy Annex. So we made like 20 of each of those things off the doppelgang, and my opponent took 4 million damage off my Overlord of the Hauntwoods. Because I put a bunch of counters on it, and that's how my day went yesterday. So if we could do that in Standard, I surely can doppelgang Knights of Round.
Well, and if you have Doubling Season in the mix, so Doubling Season doppling this, it also increases the number of counters that enter on all of them. And so if you have... Okay, so this is kind of... I would say this is Magical Christmas Land, except I have watched you do this numerous times.
Yeah.
So you like, if you copy Doubling Season, and I've done it a couple of times myself, it's delightful. If you Doubling Season, or if you make copies of Doubling Season and this, and the Doubling Seasons all enter alongside multiple copies of Knights of the Round, all of them will probably be maxed out immediately.
That's right.
But if a saga does not have read ahead, and it enters with enough counters on it to max it out, you just get all of the past chapters. So you would create 3, 6, 9, 12, 2/2 knights each, and all of your creatures. So all of them that were created from all of them would get 2/2 for each one. And of course, 1 million indestructible counters. Not that that's relevant beyond the first, but they'll be there. That's absurd. Yeah, as long as you can have one creature that can attack in the mix of all that, you're probably gonna win that game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this. This is...
Or if we're already in Magical Christmas Land, throw Terror of the Peaks or an Impact Tremors in the mix and just giggle. Yep. All right. Yeah, I love this. So Knights of the Round is going to open up like big Timmy nonsense like that in a way. It's like a super Overlord of the Mistmores, and yeah, I'm here for it. So thank you for calling that out and bringing it to my attention. Okay. Speaking of big Timmy nonsense that goes really, really well with indestructible counters. Ancient Adamantoise. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? So
I have, yeah.
It's a turtle. It's an 8-drop 8/20. Sure. With Vigilance and Ward 3, damage isn't removed from this creature during cleanup steps, and all damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control is dealt to this creature instead. And when this creature dies, you exile it and create 10 tapped treasure tokens. Which, talk about the feeling of kind of a boss fight, where at the end of it all, like, you get all the loot. That's kind of fun. But yeah, so all of your damage is redirected to this big old turtle that your opponent has to chip away at repeatedly. And in the art, it actually looks like there's an anime protagonist, like, slashing at its face, which is just fitting, I think.
It has Ward 3, so, like, kind of hard to target and remove, right? And if you end up go for the throaty net and paying 5, I get 10 treasures, which is crazy, right? So even when it dies, it has a lasting effect. The card that first came to mind, not just because it's another turtle, but is Fecund Greenshell.
Yes.
That cares about your creatures having bigger butts than they do their fronts. And so it would trigger the Fecund Greenshell ability, which says if you have 10 or more lands in play, all your creatures get +2/+2. And recently I've been tinkering around with a brew with Fecund Greenshell and Betor from Dragonstorm, which cares about you having up to 40 toughness in big butts. So Ancient Adamantoise gives you 20 out of the 40 that you need, which immediately triggers 2 of Betor's abilities. By the time you have Betor, this Fecund Greenshell, and you are ++ in your creatures, you get all of these things. That's the first thing that came to my mind is how many Ancient Adamantoise can I slam in this Betor to all deck?
That sounds gnarly. I'm here for it. Yeah, and I mean you got to be ramping pretty aggressively, but the green shell is going to be helping you put extra land drops down. So all of a sudden, an 8-drop doesn't feel crazy necessarily.
You've got, in that deck, I mean, you do have to have, like, I don't know, 6 basic forests in the deck or something like this. But you can play Bloomvine Regent, also from Dragonstorm. Ramps you for a green mana. It's also a 4/5, so it would trigger feckin' Green Shelf, enters the battlefield after, and it gains you life. Both it and Betor are dragons. So this Tortoise is sort of like the missing piece that we had to all of this, like struggling to get up to Betor's ultimate. But if I slam a Tortoise for, 8 mana, which you can surely do in that deck on turn 6, let's say, my creatures are going to be huge.
Oh, yeah.
And you're never going to kill my creatures unless you Wrath, because then I can redirect all the damage to this 20 toughness creature.
Let's go. Well, and yeah, I dig that. The other use for this that I thought was kind of fun is, we were talking about Knights of Round getting indestructible counters on stuff. Like, if this thing is indestructible, you can just keep stacking the damage. I don't care. And so all of a sudden, throughout the entire game, like, every like, I'm indestructible, basically, as a player, if I have this and an indestructible counter on it. The one interaction that I thought was pretty funny that somebody mentioned was Paranation, which is this 6-drop reanimation spell from Dragonstorm, where it gives the creature a hexproof and indestructible counter and returns it from the graveyard to the battlefield. So if you Paranation an Ancient Adamantoise, it puts your opponent in a position where they need to somehow deny damage prevention, which there are some things that can do that, but they're pretty fringe and not great on rate, at least in Standard. But you have to deny damage prevention or force me to, like, sacrifice or exile it somehow. And it's like, basically, are you running Sunfall or, like, a really well-timed Sheoldred's Edict? Like, anything shy of that. I'm basically untouchable. It reminds me a lot of the old Book of Exalted Deeds Faceless Haven combo.
Oh, yeah.
The old Facebook, where it's like, are you running Field of Ruin? Like, and do you have it right now? Like, yes or no? If not, tough luck. I guess I don't lose. And it kind of has that same vibe. I guess unless the opponent was paying rapt attention and taking notes about an hour ago when we were talking about that mill deck. That's the way you attack this, I suppose. But it's definitely a fun way to kind of rewrite the game state with Yeah, I think this card is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, and it's going to create a mini game. At least I know in Commander this is going to be, definitely appreciated.
And it's non-legendary, so I can doppelgang it.
You sure can. Yeah, when in doubt.
Right.
Now, the question that I have, when you have multiples of these, so all damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control is dealt to this creature instead. If you have 2 of them,
you choose which
you
one
do choose.
you want to have
Okay.
damage dealt.
Okay, you don't have to assign the same damage to both of them, like, because
no. What it would do is essentially it creates 2 replacement effects, and because it's your card, you choose which replacement effect you want to apply.
Okay, so it wouldn't effectively double the damage, but hit these, because that would get awkward. All right, excellent. Actually, I think that would actually create a feedback loop then, because the damage would be being dealt to another permanent you control, so that it would get rerouted to this one. That'd be. Oh wait. Does it already do that? Because there's this if clause where all the damage is redirected to it. And then if you have another Adamantoise, it wouldn't see that damage, I don't think.
No.
I hope not.
Because they're 2 of the same ability. So you have to choose which one to apply.
Right. And once the damage is dealt, the replacement has already occurred and it cannot occur again. Like, right. Okay, all right. Cool. Because that would just be a Polyraptor scenario where the game draws, and that'd be awkward. So I'm glad we're not in that situation. Okay, cool. But yeah, Ancient Adamantoise, fun stuff. I'm here for it. All right, so I have 2 more cards that I want to talk about that I think are possibly 2 of the strongest cards that we have in this set. Are there any that you wanted to touch on before we dive into them?
No, let's go ahead and talk about yours.
Okay. Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. I mean, we haven't talked about him on the podcast yet. Don't worry, we were going to. 3/3 for 2 and a black. Whenever Sephiroth enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature if you do draw a card. Whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If this is the 4th time this ability has resolved this turn, you transform Sephiroth. And Sephiroth transforms into Sephiroth One-Winged Angel, or One-Winged Angel, if you want to be pedantic about pronunciation. And 5/5, shout out to that person who commented on my YouTube channel. 5/5 Angel Nightmare Avatar. Angel Nightmare Avatar, that's a hell of a type line. Flying Supernova. As this creature transforms into Sephiroth One-Winged Angel, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And whenever Sephiroth attacks, you may sacrifice any number of other creatures if you do draw that many cards. That's a mouthful.
A lot of abilities for 1 card.
And a 3-drop, no less. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very good. It's probably the best like blood artist effect that you could get on a card ever.
Right.
Because it's whenever another creature dies, target opponents. It's not each opponent, so I guess it's fair for Commander.
Right.
But it's just whenever another creature dies. So its ability says when it enters or attacks, you may sack another creature, draw a card. So if you sack another creature with Sephiroth, you get to sack that creature, draw a card, opponent loses a life, you gain a life, which is like fantastic, right? So somehow you need to make it resolve a 4th time, which probably isn't happening until the next turn, right? So turn 4 or turn 5. And you probably got to do something with like a mass damage spell that doesn't kill Sephiroth. So we have Pyroclasm in Standard, right? That's in Dustmourne. So if your opponent's playing a cheap creature deck and you Pyroclasm your opponent and you kill 3 things, you only got to kill 1 more to flip this thing. In which case, if that's happening, I don't know how you lose the game. Because then you have this emblem, and there is no emblem removal. It's one of the very few creatures in the game that creates you an emblem that you can't interact with. I don't know. I think this card is very good. Yeah. It does have to compete with other 3-drops in black currently that are played in Standard. So the cards I reference are like Preacher of the Schism, right? Which is a 2/4 that either gets you a blocker, draws you a card, loses a life, or both, right? And Preacher of the Schism is very good against the red-based aggressive strategies because it essentially blocks and kills everything, or attacks into something. And then the other one that's played currently is Karsi Revenant from Dragonstorm. That is your 3/3 lifelink Death Touch flying that renews to do the same thing, like put those types of counters on a creature. So Sephiroth has to compete with those 2 cards. So if there's a deck that I foresee Sephiroth being in, the Rakdos like Disturbing Mirth deck.
Yes.
That Disturbing Mirth is an enchantment from Duskmourn. It's like a red and a black, and you can sacrifice, I think it's an enchantment or a creature.
Yeah, sacrifice another enchantment or creature, and if you do draw 2 cards. Yes.
Yep, and then when it goes away, or when you sacrifice this, you get to manifest Dread. The first part is more important. Because in this deck, you are playing like the 1-mana artifact creature that when it dies, you get to flip a card off the top of your deck. You may play it this turn, right? The 1/1 artifact creature with haste. You get to play Piggy Bank. Yeah. Piggy Bank, right? When it dies, you make a treasure token, right? So to me, like Sephiroth fits in that type of a shell better than maybe those other 2 creatures do, where you could play those other 2 creatures in the sideboard against the aggressive decks. And it makes for you a faster win condition. Generally, that Rakdos deck is also playing tons of removal. So even if you got to like 1-for-1 or 2-for-1, some removal spells against your opponent, it seems fine and acceptable. And you can play Pyroclasm in that deck. That there is a benefit if your creatures die from Sephiroth, and you get to wipe your opponent's creatures too. So I think it fits in that sort of a strategy. It's the most effective one.
100%. The other thing that I see with this that I really want to make happen, it's definitely an aristocrat card, right? You want to have material down that you can sacrifice, and the fact that Sephiroth is pinging while also drawing you cards and giving you a 1-sack one basically free sacrifice per turn is awesome. I want to run this alongside like Scavenger's Talent, and those kind of cards. Because Scavenger's Talent's maximum, like once you get it all the way, leveled up, you could sacrifice 3 creatures on the end step in order to bring something back. So if Sephiroth is here for that, then all of a sudden, and I would also want to use it alongside something like Achik, because Scavenger's Talent and Achik, the Emerald Radiant from Aether Drift, that produces a ton of tokens and gives you fodder to be sacrificing, and so the ability to get these blood token triggers, it would be insane. And I've done actually a fair number of I've played with a Golgari bug deck right now with Achik, Emerald Radiant, and just a lot of weird pieces from Aether Drift with Haywire Mites and Scavenger's Talents and things like that, and I'm not about to say that it's going to be a big meta contender, but like when I play it seems stronger than it consistently surprises me with how resilient it is. And so a strong Blood Artist at the 3-drop slot, just in the mix in that kind of a deck, could be insane. Like it could really crank it to 11. And we have so many just small creatures that are wanting to be sacrificed right now. Not to mention like Orzhov Raise the Past. That kind of a thing is also just absolutely insane. Like now, does that need a 3-drop like Sephiroth? Probably not. But the sacrifice tools, like I feel like we have a lot of pieces and we're just waiting for the right deck. Or like, I don't know. I want to believe that like Sib Sig Ceremony with Sephiroth, maybe that'll be a thing. I don't know. Someday I'm gonna keep holding out hope. But that is to say, I feel like Sephiroth is just generically strong enough. If you're running a black deck that likes to sacrifice creatures, or even just kill creatures, like he's just gonna be good. Even if you're not trying to even if you're not really trying to speed the flip, your opponent just has to respect him. And honestly, for the most popular villain, I think it's safe to say from the Final Fantasy franchise, at least here in the United States, this character needed to be, they really needed to juice the card, and they did. I think this guy's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy this card. It'd be interesting to see how many like build arounds you could do with it, and people are going to say, you already know, most Magic players, it just dies to Doomblade or dies to whatever removal every card does. So I sort of like have taken that argument forever off the table about any cards. It's just like, but it 3/3 is strong stats on the front side, right? It doesn't just die to like Burst Lightning or Torch the Tower unless they sack something. 5/5 on the back end. It's just great. But again, once you get that emblem, it's there forever.
Yeah.
Having
a permanent
I see
Blood
Sephiroth
Artist
being a great card played alongside of like Archfiend of the Dross, like in a black shell. Just because, if a creature dies and your opponent loses 3, you gain 1. So it makes your removal spells more premium.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if Standard has the right tools to make that kind of an aristocrat deck work, Sephiroth's going to be a part of it, and he's going to help take it over the edge. And I'm hopeful. It would be an interesting change to the current environment. And if that was in the mix and people had to start devoting sideboard slots to respect a sacrifice deck, things might get a little more diverse. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So going from hopefully a new archetype stepping forward, let's take a look at an awesome Izzet card.
Yes.
Vivi Ornithir. So another beloved card, another beloved character getting a very powerful Magic card. He's a 0/3 for 1 blue-red that has this ability 0. Add X mana in any combination of blue and or red, where X is Vivi's power, but activate only during your turn and only once each turn. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a 1/1 counter on Vivi, and he deals 1 damage to each opponent. So 0:. I haven't seen a card with 0:, in the text box in 20 years. Like it's been a minute, I feel like. So here we are. An activated ability that's truly free.
Yeah. This card is very good. Obviously you have the Agatha Soul Cauldron reference, right? You could throw Vivi into the soup and put it on a creature that has higher than 0 power and go to town. you know, again, I'm talking from a standard perspective, right? Right now, probably the best deck in standard, or at least most played standard, is the Izzet Prowess deck. This card doesn't have prowess, right? However, this card also works really well with Monstrous Rage, right? So considering, any deck that's just going to pump Vivi's power. So I think the other card you referenced earlier was the +3/+0. If the creature dies, you manifest Dread or something from Duskmourn.
Turn Inside Out, yeah.
Turn Inside Out. So both of those cards give +3 power to Vivi. Okay?
Yeah.
You do that, you pay 0, add 3 mana to your mana pool.
You get 4, actually. Because you'd get the 1/1 counter from his other ability.
Oh, yes, true. 4 power. That's correct. So you add 4 mana to your mana pool. The Prowess deck is all about casting multiple spells in a turn. Mm-hmm. So, right now, Drake Hatcher is sort of like the card that solidifies being ahead in the mirror match because you're able to pump the power of that card and then make Drakes and stuff like that. Vivi, I think, definitely means that we don't need to play like Slick Shot Show Off in that deck anymore. Focus more on the non-creature aspect and play this, plus the pump spells. Because if I can 0 Vivi and cast Stock Up, plus still have mana up, that's crazy, right? Like, that just seems super, super good to me. And every time you cast a non-creature spell, Vivi deals damage to you. So here's me casting my Burst Lightning. I make 4 mana, I Burst Lightning in your face, deal 2, deal 1 from Vivi's ability, pump Vivi up, right? Monstrous Rage my Vivi, pump it to 5 power, 0, add 5 mana to my mana pool, cast Stock Up, get 2 spells, ping you for 1. Like, this seems really good. Right?
Oh, goodness, yes. I mean, yeah, 100%. I mean, all the stuff you're talking about, like right now, one of the kind of saving graces against the Izzet deck is that turn when they play Stock Up. Like right now, if it's turn 3 or 4 and they have to play Stock Up, there's a good chance that their aggression has slowed dramatically because paying 3 is a pretty heavy cost in the early turns that are very important for that deck. But Stock Up's good enough that, a lot of folks are still running it, and as they should. Well, Vivi all of a sudden, like, getting to 3 mana, that's just going to happen a lot. That's not really that big of a deal. And so all of a sudden, Stock Up just becomes another card draw spell. And the other thing that's crazy about this is the notion of being able to generate, like you're saying, like hit Vivi with 1 buff spell. There's also the buff that gives haste from Dragonstorm. Wild Ride. Wild Ride. So that all of a sudden, like if you hit Vivi with a Wild Ride, like turn 3, right? Or turn 4, you play Vivi, hit it with a Wild Ride. All of a sudden, Vivi can now swing. You've pinged, and the power is what, 4 at that point? Like,
yep.
And so you then pay another 4, and like assuming you have a Core Steel down for this, once you have 4 mana in your pool, you could like Stock Up and then, or you could just go like sleight of hand, opt like Burst Lightning,
or because you've now put Vivi's power to 4, you can tap Vivi, tap a red, and harmonize the Wild Ride, give it another 3 power, and then Vivi makes 7 mana. Now pinged your opponent for 2.
I mean, you're like kicking your Burst Lightnings just because you can at that point. That's insane. Yeah, the amount of prowess triggers that you're doing generating.
Oh, wait, that's not all, because you can still play Callous Sellsword for a red and fling Vivi at your opponent. Right? You can pump its power to infinite. You can cast all of your spells. The last spell that you cast is Callous Sellsword. Now Vivi's flinged and actually killed you.
Oh my goodness. So
you don't have to attack with Vivi.
Yeah, well, why? Actually, yeah, fair point. Why bother? Yeah. Oh my goodness. This is insane. Like, I liked this card. I knew this card was going to be good, but oh my god, the more we talk about it, the more insane it gets. I mean, yeah. This thing's nuts.
It's pretty good.
And this is just from a standard perspective. I have a feeling there are modern Storm players who are just salivating at this right now, right? I mean,
yeah, like, hello, they unbanned Mox Opal in Modern, right? So you cast Mox Opal, put a counter on Vivi, damage. Cast Mox Amber, damage from Vivi, counter on Vivi, right? Now Vivi makes 2 mana. Okay, dude. And those are legendary artifacts, but you can cast more of them, so let's cast Emery, right? Cast Emery, let's mill ourselves do some things. What else can we cast?
Yeah, Mila Mishra's Bauble, go grab that. Or like
Bauble you, deal damage, plus Vivi, then I get to look at the top card, and I get to draw a card or something on the next turn. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why not? Seems pretty good. Yeah. So, yeah, I think the possibilities with this little guy are actively insane. And so whether you play Standard or Commander or Modern, or, I mean, maybe frickin' Legacy, I don't know. But, like, just be ready for this guy kind of all over. I have a feeling this card is going to redefine kind of how Izzet decks operate right now, and it's going to speed them up. Now, it's funny because the one kind of saving grace of a card like this is that theoretically you have to tap out on 3 and get nothing immediately, in theory. Sure. But we're talking about all the different ways where we're going to be able to get around that, and I don't think it's going to be that hard. Like, you sandbag it slightly and the payoff is more than worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, referencing the Izzet Prowess deck, I mean, there's plenty of times where the Prowess deck is just casting Drakehatcher as a 1/3 on turn 2. If your opponent doesn't kill it, they're having a bad time the next turn. Same thing's true about Vivi here, right? I'll play it as the 0/3. It dies to all the same removal spells that Drakehatcher would, except you probably die the next turn.
Right? Yeah. Drakehatcher is a problem that you have to respond to if you don't kill it right away. Vivi will just end you if you don't kill it right away. Yeah.
Yeah, like imagine having Drakehatcher and then you cast Vivi, right? So you can't win the game like immediately, right? As you would, like if you go turn 2 Drakehatcher, turn 3 Vivi, right? That means you're not pumping this Drakehatcher and getting the value out of it. But for sure on turn 4, if I get to untap with both creatures, we're just going to cascade into all of these different spells. My Vivi and my Drakehatcher are going to be insanely huge because of Prowess Trigger plus pumping. Like, probably solidifies like a turn 4 win, right?
Probably.
I don't need to play Monastery Swift Spear anymore. I can just play. You could play Swift Spear, but I don't think you need to. You could just play 4 Drakehatcher and 4 of this. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because you might be thinking, well, but what are the chances that they'll have a good follow-up once they've done all that? That deck right now is running like 12 card draw spells. They'll have it. Like you have a way to refill your hand and you'll be able to keep moving. Like it's going to work more often than it doesn't, I think. Yeah. So yeah, the best deck in Standard is going to get a new toy that might just make it better. Time will tell. Because right now that Izzet deck is already fast enough and consistent enough that I don't know that they need to add anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But if it could get better, I mean, why not? Like, I'm sure people are going to be trying it day one, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. So those are the ones that I wanted to touch on today. So this has been a hefty one. Thank you for hanging out and chatting, man. This is always a good time.
But listen, you are, we didn't necessarily come up with a question for today, but I've got one. So, in the Final Fantasy set, you have cards on the bonus sheet that are not standard legal, and each of the cards on the bonus sheet has a special art that displays like a iconic moment in the game, right?
Right.
So for like Final Fantasy 1, for example, Nature's Claim is like the pixelated one, right? So which one of those so far previewed cards is your favorite?
Ooh. So you mentioned Nature's Claim, which actually that particular one shows artwork from Final Fantasy VI, which is one of my favorite games. I loved Final Fantasy VI. It was one of my favorite video games of all time. And Search for the Frozen Esper is the very first thing that you do. You have to go find this Esper, and you're with 3 characters who are in this MagicJank armor. It's overpowered and busted. Like, I don't think a single player has ever lost in the beginning, even if they tried. But anyway, that's in the discussion. Like, there's something about that pixel art, because it is just a straight like screenshot from the Super Nintendo game. And there is something about that really does, I do find that striking in a good way. So I do like that. I got to be honest. So that's one that does kind of do it for me. I'm glancing through the other ones real quick because there were a few that were pretty darn slick.
While you're looking, just so the listener knows, like all of those arts are screenshots essentially from the game. Right?
Yeah,
It seems like some chatter out there that people don't like that, or that they are artwork that also appears on the Final Fantasy TCG, and it's like, yeah, it's its game.
It's
like
classic, classic artwork. Yeah. So I've got two.
Okay.
So it's funny. One that actually, I think the design on it is actually just a little awkward, but the new Ragavan is actually Zidane, who is the protagonist from Final Fantasy IX, and he is literally like a pirate with a monkey tail. So he's kind of perfect for like the Ragavan like synergies there. It's just kind of it just fit like so well. Like genuinely that card, like all of Ragavan's text, I flavorfully it's a perfect match. So I think that one's delightful. And another one that I know a lot of people were very excited about for good reason was the Sephiroth the Savior, which is a reprint of Atraxa Grand Unifier. That one is also
beautiful
breathtaking.
Artwork.
Yeah, and it's featuring the concept art of the characters that have been seen, that they had in the instruction manuals or promotional materials all throughout. And with these, I mean, it's gorgeous art that they have access to. So I have no issue with them putting them on cards, honestly. Like it's cool. They look slick. Yeah. Let's play with them. Yeah. So how about you? What's your favorite out of these?
So I might be biased because, like I said, I'm one of your ambassadors for the Final Fantasy set, so I had the opportunity to open some packs. So I mean, my favorite is definitely the Stay With Me Rhystic Study, because I've never had the opportunity to open up Rhystic Study out of a booster pack, but I did out of one of mine. So I got like this foily version of Stay With Me, which is Rhystic Study. So now I just got to find what commander deck that I want to put this in, because I normally don't play with these cards, and I also never pay the one. So we will see how many of my commander opponents will in fact pay the one.
If you're wondering which of your commander decks would look or would work well with this, look at whichever one has blue in it, and there you go.
That's it.
Yeah,
slam it.
Whichever one has blue in it, and you're going to play next. Just put it in that one. Yeah.
A close second for me, I really like the art on the Deadly Dispute reskin. Is pretty sweet. I forget its name right out of the bat, but it's a reskinned Deadly Dispute.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, it's Baron Rivalry. Looks like a moment from Final Fantasy IV. If I'm not mistaken, that's Cecil. The Death Knight. In there. Nice. That is actually gorgeous.
Sweet artwork.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Final Fantasy certainly does not disappoint when it comes to artwork. And I really like the art direction on it too, like having some of the original Final Fantasy artists create new concept art for the characters that they've previously drawn. Like that's a nice little touch that you don't see, not even in Final Fantasy's TCG, right? They're not doing that, but they did it for Magic, and their art's first appearing on Magic cards, which is really, really, really sweet.
Yeah, no, I love it. The feel of it. I mean, that's the thing. As an old school Final Fantasy fan who's been off of that franchise for years, nothing against it. It's just the newer versions didn't quite get me the same way the older ones did. But I have that nostalgia in looking at these cards. It's bringing me back in a way that is very tangible and very real. So, I mean, they hit the mark on that in that regard, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, amazing stuff. Yeah, it's a good shot. I hadn't seen the Baron Rivalry before. That actually looks awesome. I've been meaning to do Final Fantasy IV. I've heard good things, and the artwork for or the card for Cecil. He's a like a Dark Knight who redeems himself and becomes a paladin, and they hit that dead on, and the card looks awesome, and I want to play that game because I want to see his story.
Yeah.
So. And that's not a thing I would have been thinking about right now if it wasn't for all of this. So, yeah, wonderful stuff. Cool. All right. Anything else before we head out? Thank you for that question. That's a good one. Because, the Through the Ages bonus sheet, which, by the way, that's another thing. All these cards that we're talking about, Rhystic Study, Deadly Dispute, Ragavan, these will be in set boosters or the play boosters as well as collector boosters. They're in the bonus sheet. So they will not be impacting it's just like the special guest slot. It will not be impacting legality. So these are not coming to standard. Don't worry.
Right, unless they're already in Standard for some reason. But also, you can only get foil versions of them from collector packs, but you can open non-foils in regular play boosters.
Yeah, so there is a chance that you will crack open a Deadly Dispute or a Rhystic Study or a Ragavan in these packs, as if you didn't need enough reason to, to want to get your hands on these. Yeah, there are also these insane bombs in there, which, excellent. Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you, dear listener, dear viewer, for hanging out. Before we close it down, Carla, do you have anything coming up that you want to let people know about?
What's coming up? We have MagicCon Vegas coming up in a couple weeks.
We do.
June 20th, that weekend.
That weekend, yes.
Is it like 3 or 4 weeks away now? I don't know. 1, 2...
It's 4 weeks away.
3, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
4 weeks away.
And, yeah, the weekend, 20th, 21st, 22nd. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll be in Las Vegas. I think our meet and greet is tentatively scheduled for Sunday morning. So if you're going to be there, make sure to stop by. We'll have the exact times once we get the official schedule, but we should have the meet and greet around then. So you'll be able to stop by and talk to us, but just like stop and ask us to play Magic, because like as much as we're there like doing creator things, a lot of the content that we create is while we are playing games of Magic. That's the most fun and most interactive thing to do. Because I surely don't sign up for events. I just go around and sit and play Magic. So I do have the Final Fantasy pre-cons. So I'm definitely going to be bringing at least 2 of them with me to play with. Because I've been playing with the Cloud pre-con, and that deck is pretty sweet. That's the equipment deck.
Excellent.
And I will have my Marvel Commander deck on me. That's Captain America. So maybe I'll have 2 equipment decks on me. Who knows? Plus Planeswalkers and all of that stuff. So
love it.
Lots of sweet new Commander decks to be playing. So that's coming up 4 weeks.
Coming up fast. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'll be there too. And I know I'm the same way. I don't sign up for events. I'm bringing my Commander decks with me. The reason that I'm there is to hang out and see you folks and get games in. That is the primary objective. That and hot tub streams. But, we'll worry about that when we get there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what? Anyway. So, but yes, if you see us out on the floor, if you see me wandering around with the quiver case, it has my decks in it, and I'm down to play. If I'm not sitting down actively playing, I'm probably open for a game. So, yeah, just say hi. And pull me over to some table space and let's make it happen. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one, everybody. Later.